Hello guys, my name is Niken Sitorus. Now I'll explain to you about what is translation and translation technique. So translation is the process of translating the source text into the target text. Translation is the process of transferring message from source language into target language. In doing translating process, a translator must have knowledge of the source language and the target language. Meanwhile, translation techniques are the different ways in which a professional translator will translate a given text. The simplest of these you will probably already heard of literal translation. Well guys, we know that there are 18 kinds of translation technique. So here for example, we will make it in Bahasa into English. I and my partner will explain to you one by one. Now we are going to number 1, that is adaptation. Adaptation occurs when something specific to one language culture is expressed in totally different way that is similar or appropriate to another language culture. For example, the short text is sekeputih kapas. In the target text as white as snow. Because it is this technique is popular to use in idiom. And then the second is amplification. This technique introduces or adds details information that are not formulated in the short text. For example, the short text is wanita itu datang terlambat. So the target language become the beautiful girl came late. And then the third is borrowing. Borrowing is taking a word or expression straight from another language. This technique is divided into two: pure borrowing and naturalized borrowing. The first one is pure borrowing. It is a translation technique that completely takes the term of the words directly from the source language without any change into the target. For example, in the short text, place this, and in English, place this. So that is a pure borrowing. And then the second is naturalized borrowing. It is a technique of translation that takes directly the term or the word from source language by naturalizing the spelling into target language. For example, dia membeli komputer kemarin. So the target language, he bought a computer yesterday. We can see the word is computer become computer.
Okay, hello all. I'm Damiasi Lumengaol. So I'm going to continue the explanation about translation techniques. Okay, the fourth is description. This is the technique that replaces a term or expression with description of its function. For example, search language, saya suka getuk. Into target language, I like a Japanese traditional food made of cassava. In here, a term of getuk change into a Japanese traditional food made of cassava. There is description of its function of getuk. And then the fifth is calque. This is the literal translation of a foreign word or phrase. It can be lexical or structural. Okay, for example, search language, Directorate General. Into target language is Directorate General. This is a phrase that translates from search language into target language. That I think it is structural. Next, the sixth is generalization. This technique uses the natural term or general term. For example, becak is the source language, but into target language become vehicle. becak there is no specific translation, so it is called vehicle.
Well, now we are going to the number 7, that is modulation. This technique changes the point of view in relation to the search text. It can be lexical or structural. For the example, the search language, tidak semua orang tidak menyukainya. So the target language is everybody's like it. And then the number 8, compensation. These techniques introduce or replace elsewhere an element or stylistic effect from another place in the target text because it cannot be reflected in the same place as the source text. For example, the source language sebuah celana, and in the target language a pair of trousers. And then the number 9, discursive creation. This technique is used to establish a temporary equivalence that is totally unpredictable out of the context following the translator creativity. For example, the source language sang Godfather, and then the target language the Godfather. I mean that discursive creation, it is we know that to translate a movie, a novel title, and the other. So the next will explain by my friend.
Okay, the 10 is established equivalent. This technique uses a term or expression that is recognized by dictionaries or language in use as an equivalent in the target language. Okay, for example, search language, hormat kami. In the target language, sincerely yours. We can see from the example, there is used a term by dictionary or our daily phrase. And the 11 is linguistic amplification. This technique adds elements of linguistics from search language into the target language. Sometimes appears dubbing or interpreting. For example, search language. Biar aku saja yang mengangkat telepon. The target language is I get it. The 12 is linguistic compression. This technique collects the linguistic elements that exist in the search language. This technique is often used in interpreting or dubbing. Okay, for example is apa kamu lapar? Into the target language is hungry.
And then number 13, that is literal translation. This technique starts from word for word translation and then make changes to the conformity of source language grammar with target language grammar. For example, the source text is saya akan meneleponmu. In the target language is I will call you. So here we can see that is a translate word for word translation. And then number 14, variation. These techniques change linguistic or paralinguistic elements, intonation, gesture that affect aspect of linguistic variation. Change of textual tone, style, social dialect, geographical dialect, and this is for introduce or change dialectical indicators for the character. For example, the source language, berikan buku itu ke gue sekarang. And then the target language, give it to me now. And then the 15, transposition. This is a translation technique that changes source text grammatical category in the target text. For example, from verb to noun or phrase to word. This technique is used because the grammatical structure and language systems are often different in other language and require structure adjustment. For example, sangat terampil and the target language is become adapt.
The 16 is substitution. This technique changes linguistic elements for paralinguistic elements, or we can say intonation and gesture. For example, nodding head in Indonesia translate yes. And the 17th is reduction. This technique condenses the information contained in the search language into target language. For example, search language Jokowi, Presiden Republik Indonesia. Into target language is Jokowi. And the last is particularization. This technique uses a more precise or concrete term. These techniques are more concrete and contrast with generalization. For example, search language, gadis itu senang mengoleksi emas. Into the target language is the girl likes to collect golden ring. Okay, that's all our explanation about translation techniques. We hope all of you can understand the material well. So thank you for your attention. See you.